Welcome to the Costello Coaching Podcast, where we talk about developing the human within the athlete. My vision is to enhance people's performance in all aspects of their lives. I hope you enjoy. And we're back with the Costello Coaching Podcast. I'm excited to have our guest here today, Morey Croson. Morey and I have had a relationship for a long time. He helped me when I was an athlete in terms of training, in terms of vision. And the summer, Morey, that I really remember us spending together was the summer going into my junior college year. And we collaborated and we'd take 2-3 hours together to bond as humans first. And then the results were physical. So I love that. And I take that into the work that I do today. But in this podcast, we're going to hear about athletics and beyond. So how athletics can project you to your next phase of life and the habits and disciplines that you develop within athletics and what that can do for your future. We're also going to dive into some components of metrics and how the metrics can interplay with your training and how to expedite your results either in the weight room, on the track, throwing a football, throwing a baseball, and how they interplay with each other. So I'm very excited to share this conversation with you, Morey, and I'm happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, Tommy. Yeah, this is, you guys are definitely at the right place to listen to Costello Costello Coaching Podcast. I think that, Tommy has been, even for me, as a younger trainer, he's always been such a great motivation of someone who is, just wanting it, right? And that's something too that I feel like I'd, want to even be able to understand fully, right? As somebody that is a, committed coach and one day wanting to be a parent and just, have a ton of athletes that I work with that I think are, just seeking that person that could end up having that influence that could just be so positive in being able to really want to get the best out of themselves and really be motivating. And you've been that for, me as a coach, and I'm sure a lot of other people around. And so I'm glad to be here. I'm glad we were able to do this. And, I feel like we should do it more than just one time because I'm sure we're going to have a lot of different things to talk about and not a ton of time to be able to go over all the different things that we can.
Everything, man. That's super cool.
Yeah.
So first thing I want to start with is a simple question and answer it as concisely as you can. Mm-hmm. Where in your sports career, specific time, place, do you feel that you had a light bulb moment in terms of how you shifted your habits and routines and how that created a result for you?
Yeah, I love that. And just to real quick, give a bit of a, make it so everybody's able to understand, my dad and how we met, right? My dad is a high school football coach or was a high school football coach and was your high school football coach, some years ago.
Yours too?
Yeah, was mine as well. And so I always had him growing up as, kind of that mentor. And the thing about me is I, went to Birmingham High School, public school that was in the area. And it was very easy for me to, not really have to give a lot of effort and be able to get, the grades that I needed to be able to, go to the next level or whatever. And even at that time within the school, it was like, I got an A in AP economics and would literally just play this like computer game called Mushroom Revolution the entire time.
No way.
And so just to give you an idea of like, where my background was in terms of, how much external, I guess, in ways push was put on me. And, I know in no way condone that and feel like, as much as that might have been the easier road for the teacher because of, I was a bit of a disruption at times and wanted to be kind of that cool kid in class or whatever. I think it would have served me a lot more to, be able to try harder and be able to make it so I actually put in effort rather than just say, oh yeah, let's just take the easy way and make it so we just, shut them up and put them on a video game in the background. And so that was, where some of that environment was. And then, I get to a point, I'm in college and I had these goals. I wanted to play football at UCLA. I wanted to, have all these things laid out in my life where I just felt like I was somebody that could have a lot of great impact. And I remember just, realizing I'm in Ottawa, Kansas at the time in an AI school. So I'm not even close to, UCLA. A lot of the things that I really wanted to achieve, I, wasn't. And just having like the realization, like if I don't change, like I'm gonna be stuck in this part of the world. Like in order for me to get back to LA, like I need to make it so LA, I can provide the value needed, whether then I could succeed there, or else like what has happened and transpired in my life, like this is where God is saying, hey, you could have success here. And there's people that I played with that came from LA or San Francisco and Florida and never left Kansas, right? Never left the Midwest. And so that really, for whatever reason at that particular day, it really connected with me and made it so it was like, all right, I'm going to start reading books. I'm going to start caring about my education. I'm going to just change how I am and who I am in a lot of ways to make it so I can provide more value.
Yeah. So that transition for you was then in college.
Yeah.
So you basically got away with it in high school.
Yeah.
And
junior college.
Yep.
I did as
and
well.
Then once you got to the NAIA in Kansas, you said, I got to turn it on.
Yep. And that's why I tell people all the time, like, it's a good idea to get away from we talked a little bit about it, like your friend group, like I was hanging out with my same friends in high school and junior college. And, just wasn't really, I didn't have to do much. I didn't have a lot of drive. I was just not hanging out with the type of people that were like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to achieve that. I'm going to, really having that inspiration to make changes and to make a positive impact on their life. And so being able to leave where, LA, not live with my parents, not have all like those comfortable things around me now made me have to look at like, who am I? Like, what have I, instilled in myself through the past 20 years of my life? And do I like it? Am I okay with this and what this is for the next 20 years? So that was really a big reason why I tell people, I give people the advice that by getting outside of your little circle, it really exposes you to who you are, what you are, and how you can identify the main things that need to change. I'm sure you've had a similar experience when you went outside of your when you went from high school athlete to going to Washington. You probably were like, oh man, I didn't even realize I have these certain areas or these certain things that I can maybe blind spots that I can improve. Sure. And then now you have the opportunity to say, all right, am I okay with this being an issue, or am I going to change? Or, I start to realize as you get older too, like not all people think the same way, but that's just how I am. I'm very competitive with myself. Like I want to be the best that I could be, day in and day out. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to the blind spots, that's true. A lot of times we go through life and we don't realize the blind spots that we have. But the way that I like to think about it too is when environment changes and you change your circle, when your friends change, what happens is you get to all of a sudden create a new Morey, or you get to create a new Tommy. Yeah. And you get to show up and you get to define who that person is when you're in that new environment. So that's why I think when people move across country, in the 1840s, right? They moved across the country, the settlers, or people we're coming up on 4th of July. People came from a different place and they got to create a new version of themselves. It can be a really powerful moment. And that's when you realize, man, I either have a lot of value I can provide, or I got to work a lot harder on myself in order to provide more value so that I have more value to the marketplace. Yeah. And something that I talk about consistently, Jim Rohn.
Yeah. And something that I talk about consistently though is, there is inspo from Jim Rohn here, but it was something that I was really discerning with in my own head. Yeah. There's a lot of times when you're in this training business and you set up a model maybe where you trade your time for money, and it can be time consuming and it can feel like you're not growing as a business because you're doing so much work helping others all the time. Mm-hmm. And for myself, one place that I feel very challenged is in the marketplace as I want to grow. But something that I try to connect is, where do my inner values and how do those align with my marketplace values? And a lot of times I really feel that people struggle getting up out of bed in the morning is because there's a massive disconnect between the two. Yeah. A person can have great inner values. They could be religious. They could go to church and they could serve the needy and do all the great things, right? That stereotypical great things, right? Yeah. But then when they show up to their marketplace, it's about money. It's about ripping throats out. It's about, whatever
All that goes out the window.
All of it goes out the window.
Yeah. You go to church to make it so you get your sins forgiven, not to live in, that the way of Christ or the way of whatever your church, ends up being.
So I think the beautiful conjunction of what we do is truly our inner values, and everything that we stand for as individuals goes directly to our marketplace.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear your answer on how you feel your inner values align with your marketplace.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's like a ton we can go into there, because I know we were talking about money, and I know, us looking and coming from that Jim Rohn background where he talks a lot about how, it's a great way of keeping score. And, I couldn't agree more with that overall sentiment. But at the same time, and I think we both have come to this conclusion at different times, or maybe this is something you're still looking through. I don't know for sure, but I love working with youth athletes and younger athletes, and that is also a group that, while in person and doing stuff, in that realm, there's a lot more willingness to invest into. I think both of us would want to go more towards that online side and have our continuing to push towards being able to make more money from that area. It's just not as easy as it could be for, adults or older people, or just that kind of population, right? It's a lot easier for you to say, hey, I'm going to spend $5,000 to make it so I'm healthier, or I have a trainer that's going to hold me accountable for the next 3 to 5 months, than it is for you to say, I'm going to spend that on my 15-year-old kid, hoping that they actually, decide to do that. And so, the reality situation is that you're just, the values are a little bit different there. But I have so much passion in what I'm doing that I don't measure it as much from, how much am I making compared to a certain trainer, but more so like, how much better can I be doing from a business perspective, and how can I continue to take the next step to be able to offer more value for the group of people that I want to serve, and really keeping it more towards like, who is my customer? What is my customer like? What does my customer need? And, just trying to be as isolated with that. And from there, being able to make it so I can, just get the most out of that particular person. So now to answer your question, that's where that alignment comes into play. It's like, what I love to do is I love to train to get faster and to improve my speed and understand how can I get better at, getting in and out of routes as a receiver. I still do a lot of stuff with football. We just won a championship yesterday, actually. So shout out to my Vendetta team. But the main thing is like, that's what I love to do. Like, that's where I have a lot of my knowledge base from, is because that's what I have the most interest in. Right. So I could spend time watching the fastest people in the world get out of the blocks or get out of the 40s, or, run the 60-yard dash, and just love studying. I love studying every step. I love seeing exactly where their foot needs to be and how much time it needs to be on the ground, and the distance. And so therefore that's what I put my focus and my heart into, because that's where, I can get up every day and just love what I do and be so excited about it, where, if I'm working for, just somebody that is just not aligned
Corporate
with
America,
that. Yeah, exactly. Corporate America, just somebody that just wants to lose a few pounds. I just am not the same, don't have the same motivation. So, I guess that was a long explanation, but that's
but it's thought. Important. You're that's why you do what you do, your marketplace value and your inner value, and they connect.
Yeah.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the show. Only way this podcast grows is if it's shared. So please share it with your friends, family, or anyone you feel like it can help enhance their performance in their life. A little karma goes a long way. Let's get back to the show. And there is a little background story that I want to give here. So Jim Rohn, one of my greatest inspirations, was shared to me by Morey.
Yeah.
And we had trained together. So I went to University of Washington, had transferred to a junior college. And when I came home, I wanted to get everything I possibly could out of my body. And I knew Morey had the tools in place in terms of the measurements and using the technology to measure the metrics, but also the passion and understanding for why I wanted to achieve at such a high level. And we really connected on that. And we really connected on personal development, really growing as a person. Morey was early into his business career, and I had such an interest for what he was doing in terms of business, being that his inner values and marketplace values were directly correlated. I was gravitated towards that. And he was really keen on how to get the most out of himself. And what he had shared with me was a fellow named Jim Rohn, who was really one of the first guys kind of the modern era to go and spread his message and help develop people. And one of his greatest students was Tony Robbins. So we obviously know who Tony Robbins is and what he does. This was his teacher. And Morey shared with me a 4-hour and 32-minute YouTube video titled How to Live Your Best Life Ever. And when I was on my drive to junior college, I listened to that. I was driving and I listened to the 4 hours and 32 minutes. And I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but I got there and I kept remembering in the speech, it was a speech from 1988 in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, to a group of, I believe, salespeople. And he said in the speech, he kept saying, take note on this, take note on that, take note on that. And so I get to where I was and I didn't know anybody. I was the only person that I knew in this city and I didn't know anyone on the team, and school was only 2 hours a day and practice was only 2 hours a day. And there was 4 hours and there was so much more time left in the day. So I thought to myself, what if I set a timer for 30 minutes? I listened to that speech and every time he says, take note, I just took a note. And so a month went by and I finished the speech and I had 76 pages of notes in a notebook on how to live your best life ever. And that catapulted my change. So when I asked you in the very beginning, where do you think that this transition happened for yourself, your habits and routines? Mine was that moment that I listened to that speech. And one of the really cool things is, you'll probably remember this because we're always citing his sayings and the way he would say it. But he says, sometimes the greatest honor you could have is to be in someone's testimonial. And all it takes to be in someone's testimonial is if you shared a book with them and they really got a lot out of that book, or you were looking out for them at a certain time and that really catapulted their career. For me, what has catapulted this type of work and wanting to do this was that speech shared by you.
Love that.
And that's from the bottom of my heart. I always cite back to, Morey shared with me how to live your best life ever.
I appreciate that. And I love that. And that's really why I do what I do. Like it's at the end of the day, it's not as much about the financial where it is. I do feel like and I know that's my dad instilled that in me too, right? Like I remember when he was at Chaminade, briefly the first time in the 90s, and then he went over to Birmingham, and just such a change in the people, right? And that Chaminade and nothing against it, just has a lot more
for some
resources.
Perspective of people who don't understand, Chaminade is a private Catholic school with great resources, great people, great leadership, and it attracts some of the upper end
everything athletes.
It attracts some of the best people in the whole San Fernando Valley, LA, Ventura County. It attracts some of the best people there. And then Birmingham, where Morey went, was public school, hard nosed and a tougher part of the neighborhood in the Valley. And, it produced some great football players sure.
Yeah. But was definitely a lot more diverse. So ended up being not a great situation in Chaminade. Goes to Birmingham, and 4 or 5 years go by, and the leadership that was at Chaminade that forced him out and started to make changes in the like the administration, but also just the culture itself.
Sure.
Right. Like, Chaminade had like a certain culture, and then these people came in, there was a principal, vice principal, and we're just trying to have this, and it was just not working, like the business of running the school, which is obviously, private school, you need to be making money. It was just failing. And so they came back to my dad as one of the people that they wanted to get back because of, there was a lot of success that was happening in athletics. And, Chaminade, as many of the private schools in LA, are built off of the success of the athletics, because that's what attracts the, athletes that have the money to pay for the tuition. And so my mom chased him out, because it was just, she saw how much like passion my dad had for, coaching these kids and the influence he was having on those kids. Just as simple as, having just a big bag of peanuts or just the Zone bars, and just giving those to some of the kids would, be at practice at 4 p.m. and they're, 300-pound kids or 250-pound kids. And like, I haven't eaten today, why are you freaking, not able to get through the drills? Like, what's going on? Because my dad has always been somebody that cared and just like, coach, like I haven't eaten, or like, coach, like, I've been sleeping on the couch or sleeping on the floor, like, my situations and, he took that personal responsibility to actually, make a change in those people's lives and make it so they're not, in those situations or giving them a light, right? Just making it so it's like, there is a brighter side. Like my life doesn't have to always be like this. And seeing that in growing up and seeing that, right, it changes how your interpretation of, what's important is, sure. Right? Like, I want to be able to give people hope, like it's just so much stronger of a day and of a potential of a, life in general is if you have that hope, if you could see like there is something that can come from me deciding to, work hard and get the better grades or, continue to do my workouts, even though I'm not seeing the amount of change or the change that I wanted to see as quickly. If you continue to have just hope for a brighter future, it just makes it so everything else is a lot more, you can sustain a lot more, right? You can be more, durable. You can be more, have more of that motivation and be able to just withstand more of the difficulties. Right. And it is something that recently I've been able to connect with a lot more, which has been, really a blessing, right? Like there's just been for whatever reason, a chain of people that have just kind of been like, oh, I want to be, like Morey and you're running or this or you're that. And the communication and it's something I've worked on for a long time. And I don't see myself as being somebody that you would want to in ways emulate, I guess. But, now you start to have a few people say it and it makes you kind of, relook at like, I guess in ways I have really worked on myself for so long that I understand what you're saying and how you're saying. And it's not necessarily like I don't need to continue to work on myself and that I can't get better. But it's like the amount of work that I've put in myself for such a long period of time is starting to show itself and starting to actually create this opportunity for people to see like, oh, yeah, if I stick with it, like I can see how there is a positive reinforcement that can happen and a positive change that can happen. And once you start to get there, then that's what starts that momentum, right? That first little snowball in the snowball effect. And yeah, I mean, I appreciate you saying that. And I'm sure you have a lot of motivation for that as well, to be able to have that change. And that's something that I definitely want to be able to talk more about is just being able to connect with youth athletes and be a leader with those guys.
Oh, it's really cool. That's what one of our phrases is, building leaders. And the reason is that is the objective, doing our best to build leaders for the next generation and build people up. Mm-hmm. Now, getting a little bit more tactical on what you were speaking on, you were talking about hope and hope for a brighter future. And it's I feel emotion in it. Mm-hmm. I feel emotion when you speak about that. And what I try to do for my people that I work with is we look at our situations in two different lenses. We look at it in an objective lens and a subjective lens. Both have to be honored and respected. The emotion of it, the subjectiveness, opinionated feelings, those have to be respected. But also we always fall back on the objective measurements. And so it can be very emotional having a conversation with someone who I can't believe that they don't think I'm good enough, or why am I not there? Or why do I not make this much? Or why do I not have this scholarship? And all I do for them is I just lay it all out. So you want to be X, it's going to take this, this, and this to accomplish that. Okay. Now, in order to achieve number one on the list, that is going to take this amount of work for this long to achieve that with where you currently stand. Next, number two, well, we can achieve that within 3 weeks. It's going to take this much work over the next 3 weeks. Number three here, that looks like it's going to take about 18 months from where you're at right now. And then all we do is we have a clear objective measurement and we can track progress. And then motivation doesn't have to be something waking you up. You know what you need to get done in order to achieve your vision, because visions and day-to-day routine can be so different. You could have a vision of being a billionaire and you're working in a business that the whole market is worth $1 billion. That means you're going to be the only person making money in that business. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's, I feed off emotion, I feed off passion, I feed off those things, and my athletes do too. But the big thing is when we're talking about vision and accomplishment and executing goals, it's metric based. And what you do, and with your Dari system and the way that you approach the training, I loved it. It was my biggest attraction to what you did and why I was willing to take that first step to start working with you. And then all the other things got unpacked. Just like when most people show up to work with me here, it's because I want to throw harder. Okay, that's great. And then they leave here saying, oh my God, he changed the way I eat. He changed the way I think. And he changed the way I felt. He changed the way I listed my goals. But they all kind of show up wanting the metric.
Yep, 100%. Well, no, and so in what I was writing down too, as you were even talking about that, and one of the things that I think that's important when it comes into play with this is your mindset, right? Like I have thought about this for period of time, because for me, I remember, and obviously I grew up with, like I talked about, the dad that I had, and because of that, especially through football, I always felt like I needed to be like the most mentally strong on the team, right? Like I needed to hold the plank the longest. I needed to do the most push-ups, just because, like it was like, oh yeah, your dad is that big coach. Like,
there needed to be no reason why you weren't,
like you should be the shit because of where, sorry for cussing. I know that, I don't know if that's okay. But anyway, so I just think like, and I try to communicate this to people, and I know it's sometimes hard to completely understand it, especially at a young age, because you don't really understand, how everything is working at 100%. But I think the older you get and the earlier you can come into this, I think the better off you are, where, especially when it comes to strength, especially when it comes to the weight room, like strength is a mindset, like it doesn't matter how strong you actually are. It matters how strong you believe you are on that particular rep, or when doing that, because we all know, like there's been times when doing like a particular max or maybe a 5 rep max or whatever, like there are days you get it and there's days you don't get it. Right. And sometimes it just had to go with like how you stepped into the rack, right? Like you just step into the rack saying, there's no way I'm not cleaning 295 right now. And that's why you get 295, where the last time you tried to hit 295, well, your numbers going into it might have been better. Everything else was all better. You didn't hit it because you had doubts about whether or not you can do it, or at least I could do it. Right. But then when I finally actually did it, I was not really in a situation where I really should, based off of the numbers, but I just had like a tremendous belief in that I needed to do it because somebody else did it that I was competing against. And I was like, I have to do the same that he's doing because that's just who I am. And then I got it, So it's just like, it's more about like, what is it that is inside of you? And I think it's the same with speed. Like if you're going to approach speed with this mentality of you're slow, then, when you start to look at yourself like I'm fast, or I'm strong, or I, throw hard, or I'm athletic, or I'm amongst the most athletic or elite athletes, right? Like there's no difference between an elite athlete and myself, then that's when you are stepped into that realm. But if you always look at elite athletes like you're second class to them, or that you're inferior in some way, then you'll always be inferior. So, you just have to overcome, I feel like that perception of who you are. Yep. And then that's when you can start to step into those objective results that you're looking for, right? Even if you can throw harder in, using a pocket radar, that doesn't mean that when it's the game on the line, right? And this is what made you somebody that I feel like Washington offered, right? It wasn't that you were a guy that threw really hard, or a guy that was stood out with really anything. It was just you were consistent, like they knew what they got, what they were going to get, right? And when you needed to make a big out, you could make a big out, right? You wouldn't all of a sudden start throwing balls. You wouldn't all of a sudden, not have control. You wouldn't have any issue going against another guy that's an elite guy in ways you probably wanted it, right? And that was one of the things that I loved about Birmingham, right? I was undersized, but it was like, I love showing up and just being that dude that could still, route up the DBs. I could still be the guy that could outrun the rich. I just love competing against the best guys. Yeah. Right. And that made it so then when we had all these big upsets and had all these big wins, that to me, it was like, yeah, of course we're, that's been the work that I've been putting in for years. I just was waiting to be able to put it out there. And, and I just love the competition. Right. And so when you go into, and that's where I feel like, in ways like everything is so guarded, like there's people that are almost protected against competition, right? Because you could transfer and you can go to these different schools and, it's so much about how hard you throw. But at the reality of the situation is like, as a pitcher, you could throw as hard as you want. But if you go against you could be throwing 95 and you go against a USC commit who, takes you yard, and you go against a Santa Barbara commit who takes you yard or, gets doubles off of you. And you just time after time after time give up big hits or walk guys that are big time guys. Like that puts in your mind that you're not into that class regardless. And so there's going to be a time where, it's not all going to align. Right. And when that happens, you might still get a Division I scholarship. But there's going to be a time where all that you'll have to deal with that. Right. You can't just push that to the side for your whole life.
Yeah, you got to have a dog mentality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the show. Only way this podcast grows is if it's shared. So please share it with your friends, family, or anyone you feel like it can help enhance their performance in their life. A little karma goes a long way. Let's get back to the show. Now, I want you to write this down because you're going to love it. I want you to research, and I'm talking about, 10th grade physiology anatomy book, nothing too in-depth, but I want you to research the anterior cingulate cortex.
Okay.
The ACC in the frontal lobe of the brain, anterior cingulate cortex.
Cingulate?
Yep.
And that's a C? Cingulate or S?
Yes, anterior cingulate cortex. I got to work with one of the world leaders in neuroscience. Not allowed to literally mention his name, how big time he is. It was really cool. Got to spend 3 days with him. And what he talks about is it's about the expansion of that part of your brain of accepting what you can tolerate. So you think about people who can tolerate a bunch of physical challenges, maybe ultra marathon runners, maybe Navy SEALs going through BUDS. They have an absurd amount of ability to tolerate physical challenges. And that has to do with that part of the brain. So performing exercises that are forced to expand that part of the brain is where you can learn to tolerate more, which is
a book.
Oh, cool.
Your Brain Explained.
Okay. Your Brain Explained. There's a recommendation.
I don't know if that's the particular author, but that's what came up.
It's not him.
Okay.
So anyways, what this guy's role was, so the guy who broke the marathon record a couple of years ago, African runner, he broke the world record for the marathon. Mm-hmm. Now, he was queued up to break the marathon record. And what Nike did was they set up all the metrics that he needed to in terms of training, nutrition, blood work, runs.
Is this Kipchoge?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So Nike set it all up. They queued him up. Perfect time of year. Everything was set up to go. Shoes. There was nothing unchecked to go beat the world record in the marathon. He goes out and he misses it by 12 minutes, the first run. Then they brought this guy in and he said, we don't know what to do. We tried everything. What do we do? He goes, did you ever talk to the athlete? And they're like, what do you mean? Of course we talked to the athlete. He's like, no, did you ever talk to the athlete about what felt good or what he needed to do or when he wanted to push it or when he wanted to cool it down? No. We had all the measurements. Everything was perfect. Obviously not. He didn't beat the world record. So they're like, all right. He goes, let me take over the training for the next 90 days. So he takes over the training for the next 90 days. Everything was based off, hey, how do you feel? What do you want to do today? He's like, I just hated how they, some days they made me go run 2.5 miles and I felt like running 30. And some days I was pretty tired and they wanted me to go run sprints. And he's like, all right, well, we'll just do everything you want to do. And then I'll push you when you need to be pushed. And so he spent 90 days with him. But cite me on this, but I believe he beat the world record by 4 minutes 90 days later. And it was the change in how he was responding with his anterior cingulate cortex.
That's awesome.
Really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I know that Kipchoge, broke it, and I know they had like a whole bunch of cameras, filming it. I don't know, I don't have a lot of context about the whole 90-day difference, but I definitely have done breakdowns on his running form, and he's amazing. He's running like 7-minute miles basically like the entire time, for however long he's running the marathon for.
It's absurd.
Yeah, it's crazy. You can have the ability to sustain, but a lot of that does go into the mindset, right? And just having the technique down and the form down and the discipline down to be able to execute the form, and that's what I love about sports in general. Is just being able to really isolate like what's going to make it so you can run faster, right? Like what are those things that stand out? And at the end of the day, it's regardless of where you are currently, like there's plenty of things. Like if I had the opportunity to work with Fred Curley or Noah Lyles, where I know I could help them in being able to improve parts of their starts, improve parts of their ability to get to their top end speed, because I just know within myself that like the isolation into performance and the metrics, there's unmatched. Like I just have such a specific way of looking at speed and developing speed and getting to your top speed that I'd be able to help them. I've seen areas that they can improve, and would just love to be able to even from there understand, like from a body perspective, what caused certain things that to not work as well, or just dive deeper into it. I worked with Fernando Manyala for a while. He's like the fastest African and has a bunch of African world records and is amongst the best. He's not. He's going to be, it's going to be tough for him to be able to beat those, like Fred Curley type of guys. I know you don't probably have a lot of context with this, but, like even the time though that I worked with him, the big thing was on his start, because he had the top end speed. He almost like caught Trayvon Bromell at the time at like, a big event. And,
how many miles per hour are these guys running?
Somewhere between like 25 and 27.
Wow.
Yeah. They're moving. And the thing is though, is like, it's impressive on getting to your top speed or, those top speeds, but really it's how effective they are in getting to the top speed. Like recently there's a Diamond League that I, did a breakdown on, and I actually had Trayvon Bromell on my podcast, and he's one of the fastest Americans. He's somebody that I looked a lot into when learning my own sprinting mechanics. So it was like really cool that he, was like, yeah, I'll hop on your podcast. I'll watch a bunch of your videos. Like, would love to connect. And he's a great dude. Like, it was so awesome that we were able to do that. And the next race he went out and you could tell, he had this like big change in his start that he's been working on. And you could tell it was like his 5th or 6th step that he just like didn't take a good step. Like he was in first, right? And this is a big event. He was out in front, he was in first, takes one bad step. By the time that step comes back down, right? I want to say it was like his left step, he hit it and you could just tell it was just too far out in front of him. By the next time his left foot came back down, he was in 4th place, and that's when he ended up finishing his 4th. Right. So it's like so precise.
Let me ask you this about sprinting. In the mindset of a sprinter, say it's 100 meter, are they feeling their technique the whole time, or are they in a competitive spirit?
Yeah. And I talked to Trayvon about this, and it is a very interesting thing to, dive into, because I think that it is it's one of those things I think we've all seen on like, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, where it's like, you have a certain, technique or a certain thing that you want to do. Like you do it so many times that you can't get it wrong. Right. It's not even about like, doing it until you get it right. Right. And even Nick Saban, I think, talks about this, where it's like, like the best, the greatest, like they don't do things till they do it right. They keep doing it until they can't do it wrong. Yeah. And so when you get to that race, it's more just about executing all the practice and the time that you put into it, not as much about, what are you thinking about in a particular, moment?
Yeah. Are some technical though? And they
I do think that some end up being in some degrees pretty technical, in that they're looking to see, I know Trayvon, he talked about like he likes to get a lot into the technical side of it. Like you have to have an understanding of the technique. And, maybe there's one or two things like I tell people all the time with like their performance, like, don't get too caught up in what it is that you're doing in terms of
biomechanics.
Yeah. And just technique. But at the same time, don't be so far disconnected where you can't
understand what you're doing.
Yeah, like that you might make a mistake or you might make whatever the particular thing that we're talking about, like you might make that error in your step, right? Or you might not have your arm in the right position, or you might not do, a particular thing. Like, let's not make that simple error. Let's be very connected to what it is that you've been working on and make sure that that's, in line. But at the end of the day, like you're competing, like you're running, like it's not anything more than just you're running 100 meters. Yeah, exactly. Or 200 meters, whatever the case may be.
All right. I want to finish this today with this exam for you. Okay. So all my athletes go through an exam before. They start working with me. We sit down at this table we're sitting at and we have a conversation, 30-minute consultation.
Yeah.
And then I ask them these questions. And this is how I quantified my mental emotional exam. I picked 5 questions that really allowed me to get a great understanding of who that person is and how they think about it. There's literally not right or wrong answers. It's just an immediate answer.
Yeah.
So
I love that, by the way. That's great.
Thank you.
Cool that you do that.
Yeah. So we do. So the 4 components that we work within are mental, emotional, functional fitness, biomechanical, and nutrition, sleep. No one is greater than the other, but they all have their own importance. Some people need more help in a specific area than others. And it's my job to facilitate where they need the help, understand where they need the help, and then give them the answers for what they need to do. Make it objective. So anyways, where I want to finish today is this. I want to give Morey the mental emotional exam.
Let's do it.
And I want you to answer this in the context of your work.
Okay.
So if you were a pitcher, right, I'd want you to answer it in the context of pitching. If you
from like a business perspective work
Yes.
or from like a training perspective?
Both. They interplay together.
Okay.
How you do your business is how you do your job.
Well, I mean, training like my particular, like.
Oh, your
work.
training.
Yeah, like my training. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
I can go more business. I'll go more business.
Yeah, go business. And listen, I know your brain a little bit because I've known you for a long time.
Yeah.
Do not answer these in your conception of what is right or wrong. So I have to do this with really intellectual guys and analytical thinkers.
Yeah.
Because they'll be able to think in the split second what the right or wrong answer is. Do what your heart says here.
Yeah.
Okay. Overthink or underthink?
Over.
Confident or unsure?
Confident.
When you look at your competition, do you think fuck you or do you think about their ranking or stature?
Fuck you.
Do you trust your preparation or doubt your preparation?
I trust my preparation.
Now, do you judge your process or your results?
Process.
Okay. So if you had a great month where you were totally in the process, doing all the work you needed to do, and you didn't make any money in your business, what would you be judging?
My process. I mean, what did I do to make it so I didn't give people the opportunity to give me money?
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. That's great. So I gained a lot from that today. I think it's going to be the first of many times that we discuss because there's so much information. Each topic we could have went hours on.
I know. I want to real quick ask you a question if it's okay.
Yeah.
Because I am just like I said, I work a lot with athletes and I think we've talked about this before, but it's just something that I am very consistently interested in. I hopefully we have enough time here. We have,
Yeah.
I'm sure you have at least 7 minutes. It shouldn't take you more than 2, but your motivation, right? Like where does your motivation, where does your inspiration come from? And, I know you talked a lot about Jim Rohn, but even before we had that conversation with Jim Rohn, you already stood out as somebody that was, intertwined, I guess, with that, realm, right? Like I just kind of led you to the water. You already had that thirst.
Sure.
And so like, where did that come from? Where did that motivation, inspiration come from? And when did you start to realize, and to go off of that, like, when did you start to realize that you were different in that way, and really be able to step into that?
It's a really good question. I know that I've been blessed with many gifts. Where I was born, the skills that I've been just blessed with, the natural born talent. And there's no ego in that.
No.
I know I have natural born talent, and I truly believe that it's my responsibility to use those. And I'm a waste of a life if I don't embody those and pull everything out of them. And that's really deep to say, a waste of a life if I don't use my talent. And I only have so much time on this earth that I have an absurd sense of urgency. Now, that might have played as a detriment in my baseball career because I never felt I was enough when I was plenty to succeed. I wanted every little metric. If I threw 90, I needed to throw 91. If I struck out 9 batters, I needed to strike out 10.
Oh.
And that's been a shift of growth for me since my baseball career has ended, and I've shifted into this work where I realize I'm more than enough to succeed for the current moment that I'm at, or else I wouldn't be in the current moment that I am.
Yeah.
And so for me, the motivation comes from the awareness of all the gifts that I have. So a sense of gratitude. The motivation comes from knowing that I am born to do great things. And now I have this absurd standard that I have to live up to internally. It's not external. It's not people put the pressure on me. It's not a sense of fear. It's more of a sense of, I can go achieve so much. You better get to work.
Exactly. But how do you work with, though, that feeling of you're not enough? How do you use that to your benefit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, you can use that like fear-based. You can use that fear-based sense of you're not enough so that you'll do more, but not necessarily if you do more, will you achieve more. It builds really good discipline for work ethic. But I believe that you have to go to a place where things start to come to you rather than you chase them in order to achieve at greater success. And I noticed that with high achieving athletes, a lot of times what they do is they play well and they perform well, but it just comes to them. They're not forcing it down the field,
And I would say to go off of that, just my own, personal advice for that is like I said, I'm dating this girl and she's very good at just being able to understand just like execution and has helped direct me in ways that I needed. And because I'm very similar, right? Like I just feel like there's no performance that I have where I'm completely satisfied with the performance.
For sure.
And I think that that's a gift as much as, she'll be like, no, you need like, be proud of yourself. Like you've done like a lot. And it's like, yeah, but that I have so much more to get. Like I just feel like I'm barely scratching the surface of my potential, and so if I don't totally get the most out of my potential, like I'm not okay with it. But what it's done is it's helped me kind of reassess my priorities, because what you said was like, and it's so true in like, this is what I've been struggling with in ways where I'm just so action oriented. Like I could just get caught up in like doing and working, that you want to be able to kind of take a step back and like reassess what is it that you are working on and towards, instead of getting so caught up in like, oh man, I need to get stronger or faster, or I need to do this particular thing within my performance in order to have a, profound impact. Instead, I would recommend, especially at times if you continue to get the same results, is like take a step back and really have a more clear understanding of what caused the result to happen, right? Like where in your process did you get to this action? Yeah, this result. Instead of just saying, oh man, I just need to do more, like, oh man, I didn't strike out 10 guys. Like, I need to have more flexibility in my arm. I need to have more strength. I need to do better. And instead, take a step back and say, whatever ends up being, it might not have been you from a strength, range of motion, whatever throwing perspective, but could have been something else that could have caused that, right? Like don't just look at it in terms of what do you need to do more of, but maybe what can you do less of? And sometimes doing less is the action, right? Like that's a big thing that yoga has helped me out with, right? And kind of getting more into that. And she's big into meditation, and I'm still trying to get my head around meditation, right? Because I'm so much of like my mind's moving, all the time. But just being able to control that less and being able to connect into, like not doing, but receiving, and being able to, perceive and, understand. And because what you do when you are doing and when you're taking action is you're kind of blocking out all that other stuff, right? It's like your way of being able to, at least in my case, like when I'm working out, like the reason I love to work out is because everything else doesn't matter, right? Like that workout is what matters. And
it's a form of meditation.
Yeah, it's a form of meditation, and it's a form of, me being able to connect with my, being and who I am. But at the end of the day, like if I didn't strike out 9 guys, like, yeah, that's on me, but it's also the other people that I went up against and me not being able to fully judge and be connected to, maybe what they were expecting. What were they not expecting? What was, my outside, and being able to better understand that. And so, I think that helps in being able to be a little more understanding and make it so you can, at the end of the day, get the results that you're looking to get.
It's amazing.
Well, I know we can continue to talk about this for a long time, but I know you can connect with so many people, and I want to make it so, really both of us can connect to so many people. And I think us being able to brand or, come back and forth with different ideas gives us the ability to do something like that. Because, working with younger athletes, I just think there's a lot that people want to be able to.
There's a lot of change that you can make for someone. Yeah. I think that's the exciting part. And I think working with a younger population, you can make a profound impact on where they're at. Yeah. And specifically, if we're looking at it autonomically, it's because of their brain and where their brain is at.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Let's stop it there. And thank you for listening. And we'll be back with more value next week. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the show. I hope you benefited from this. Give the show a follow, share it, and comment what you'd like to hear more of so we can help more people perform in all aspects of their lives.